Hello, welcome, cadets and fighter pilots, to the Silver Screen podcast and another very relevant review based on what's currently out in cinemas. We are going to do a quick roll call here of people who are present on this review. I am Mike, call sign Flash.
Oh, hey guys, sorry about that. I'm DK, call sign Serpent. Sorry about that. You just caught me in the middle of a volleyball game. I was playing with the boys.
And finally,
my name's Will, call sign Wings.
Will Wings. I like it. And yeah, Flash, Serpent, and Wings are who we're going to be referred to as for the duration of this, because yeah, we are the Top Guns of this review. But yeah, buckle in. It's going to be hopefully a bit of a fun one. We decided to review the original Top Gun because, of course, Top Gun Maverick is out in cinemas. If you haven't,
they want to hit the algorithm.
Exactly.
They did it with the strange one, so they were like, "Screw it, let's do it with Top Gun as well."
That was always my plan. In fairness, I've got that written for the entire kind of yearly plan for the podcast. But fingers
just
crossed.
pause, basically.
We're whoring ourselves out to the YouTube algorithm. So yeah. So anyway, as I say, we're joined. Obviously, I'm joined as usual by my co-host DK and regular guest Will Templar, who, as I mentioned previously, is kind of the patron saint of the podcast at this point.
I was going to say I've been on like inadvertently 4 of your latest episodes somehow, even though I was technically only on one.
Let's just pray that your internet holds today better than the last time.
It's fantastic. To be fair, yesterday my computer absolutely conked out. Like not even the Wi-Fi, like the whole thing just completely stopped working while I was in the middle of a game, and I thought no. But yeah, it's been fine. Other than that, brilliant.
That's fair enough. I will say as well that this is the first time that Will has ever seen, that Wings has ever seen Top Gun, and he just finished watching it for the first time ever, like 5 minutes before we started the recording. I watched it today earlier on for the second time ever, after watching it for the first time last year. And Serpent over there, I don't know how familiar you are with the film. I'm guessing you've seen it more than any of us.
He's never seen it.
Yeah, I've seen it quite a lot. I was one of the original suckers back in the 80s and then just watched it again recently.
Fair enough. Awesome.
Jeez, you guys are old.
I know. Tell me about it, man. Shush, respect your elders. We're still younger than Tom Cruise, and he's still doing it.
See, I wanted a podcast with your father. He was a great podcaster.
It was classified as to why I had to stop podcasting with him.
If you double my age, I still wouldn't be as old as you guys. I hope you know that.
We are your instructors, all right? Behave yourself.
Oh, sorry.
Well, without any further shenanigans, then I'm going to move, as is customary in this new particular way we're doing things, to DK for a behind-the-scenes section on Top Gun and some potentially fascinating things. Take it away, Serpent.
Thank you, Flash. Right, the original Top Gun, it was only Tom Cruise's 8th movie, so Oh Sweet Summer Child, series we're talking about ages, coming shortly after the movie's Legend, directed by the brother of Tony Scott Ridley, and All the Right Moves, in which Tom, like Mike and myself, also suffer from Howard the Duck syndrome. And for further details on that, please refer back to our earlier Silver Screen and Hit or Miss podcasts, and that's all I'm going to say on that subject. For the role of Maverick, John Cusack, Michael J. Fox, Sean Penn, Tom Hanks, Patrick Swayze, and Matthew Broderick were considered, as well as Emilio Estevez and Matthew Modine. Modine turned down the role for its focus on Cold War politics before Cruise accepted the part. Now, Val Kilmer didn't actually want to be in this film and was forced just to take the role of Iceman under contractual obligations, which is ironic as it's now one of the roles he's most associated with. Kilmer and Cruise never socialized on set and kept the distance from each other when shooting the movie. Kilmer was a recent graduate at Juilliard and brought his method of acting to bear on the role by playing up the rivalry between himself and Cruise when the cameras were off, which made Cruise and co-star Anthony Edwards uncomfortable to such a point that keeps some space between themselves and the actor. The inversion you see on screen between Maverick and Iceman isn't just acting, it is actually real tension. Apparently the two went on to become good friends, however, and Kilmer will also be making a return in the upcoming sequel. Now, Tony Scott was reportedly fired and rehired several times while shooting this movie, with such excuses given for his termination as filming the actors with their helmet visors down and obscuring their faces, to, and I quote, making Kelly look beautiful in a whorish kind of way. Now,
That's
true. It's all true. Now, all of Maverick's stunt flying in the movie was done by pilot Scott Altman, who eventually went on to become a NASA astronaut and mission commander. The movie had a production budget of $50. For every hour that Paramount wanted to film with the F-14s used, it would cost them $10,000. Naturally, with the amount of time needed to shoot a movie, this would have eaten into the budget to an extent that it would have simply been too expensive to produce. However, the Pentagon worked out a deal with the filmmakers, charging Paramount just $1.8 million for access to its fighters and carriers. In essence, the movie was subsidized by the US and the US taxpayer. The investment actually paid off, as the movie proved to be so popular that the US Navy set up recruiting booths in movie theaters to capitalize on those caught up. As a result, they had the highest rate of applications in years, approaching 500% of usual applications. The movie turned out to be the best advertisement taxpayers' subsidies could buy. And speaking of commercials, pretty much saved Ray-Ban. After the theatrical release, sales of the sunglasses shot up by over 40%. Yep, the popularity of Tom Cruise was a huge boost to sales back then. Finally, while the actual Top Gun flight school while Top Gun Flight School exists, there is no trophy for Best Pilot. Yep, movies don't tell us the truth. Who knew? Even worse, every time a member of staff is caught quoting the movie, they're fined $5. So be careful on here tonight. Your ego, go writing checks your body can't cash you.
So is that the end of the information you knew about
that is the end. Although with regards to Danger Zone, I know that Kenny Loggins was not the first one to be approached for that song.
I didn't, not that I can recall anyway. Yeah. So do you know who was approached?
No, Ian Lee Toto.
Toto the band, of course. Good band. Well, three good songs, but you know.
They turned it down for legal reasons. It doesn't go into what legal reasons they were, but that's why they turned it down. And then they approached REO Speedwagon, who also told them to get lost. And they were actually stuck for a singer when they fell back on Kenny.
Fair enough. I mean, this is just a list of the best people you can possibly approach in the 80s, really, isn't it? So
it is.
Okay, so yeah, this I don't know if you came across this in the course of your research, but I did. I was quite amazed to find out that Kelly McGillis's character Charlie was actually based on a genuine, real woman who did exist, who worked her way up the ranks through various government agencies and stuff, and has only just recently, I think, either retired or is close to retirement. But you can look her up, and she's a real person. So, yeah, crazy fact.
Then she's in the movie, then.
So, sorry,
more than she is in the movie, then.
Yeah, well, she's very much career woman, and I'm guessing not overly fond of the portrayal towards parts of this movie, but. Again, we'll get into all of that because that feeds into a few different theories. But yeah, so anyway, yeah, we'll move on to the bulk of the review now, which, as I say, if you've been listening to the recent sort of 3 or 4 reviews we've been doing, you know that we tend to do it now by categories rather than chronologically and just breaking down the whole movie. Probably just as well for Will since he has just seen it. But yeah, just to let me jump in then and give you a little bit of background first about the movie. On March the 3rd, 1969, the United States Navy established an elite school for the top 1% of its pilots. Its purpose was to teach the lost art of aerial combat and to ensure that the handful of men who graduated were the best fighter pilots in the world. They succeeded. Today, the Navy calls it Fighter Weapons School. The flyers call it Top Gun. So, you know a film's going to be good when it opens with a little introductory paragraph and it's not a Star Wars or something. That was directly from the screen at the start of the movie. So let's see, what else was I going to say? Just a few random facts that I had about the movie that DK hadn't had a chance to touch upon, or probably just didn't think were important, which may be fair. There's multiple parodies of this film. We were discussing it's been parodied everywhere from Star Stories to Keith Lemon and Paddy McGuinness's movie show. But by far the best parody remains the movie.
Okay. Sorry, I found out the title of that Star Stories. It's called The Church of Scientology Presents Being Tom Cruise. Tagline, why Scientology isn't in any way mental.
Right. Yikes. Fair enough. But as I was saying, by far and away the best parody of Top Gun still remains the movie Hot Shots, which if you haven't seen it, it's just brilliant. Just go see it. And the sequel while you're at it. So, yeah. As I said, I mentioned already Charlie being based on an actual woman. The other bit of information of note, which I think probably would be relevant to myself and DK given our other podcast, is how cool is it that they were operating out of the aircraft carrier USS Enterprise?
There you fucking go again.
It's true, though. It's genuinely true. It is a real aircraft carrier, CVN-65, and it was the one they were using in this movie. I've got some other things to touch on, but I'm going to start by asking... the first section I have really is acting. So I'm going to start by asking Will, in an effort to contain some of his behavior. Son,
my hands are here. My hands are here, not down there.
I'm going to ask what you thought about the acting in general in this movie and brace ourselves for your negative Nelly attitude.
Well, first of all, no, I'm happy. Right, so Tom Cruise surprised me because I thought he looked the same in every film he does, but I was like, oh my god, he actually is young in this. Like, he's not like it was about it was a long time ago, and then when I realized, damn, that's Tom Cruise, I was like, okay, now I can understand why he's so cheesy and why he's so 80s. And then, because I didn't actually look at the date this film was made, I thought, oh, okay, this was maybe like 15 years ago. And then it's closer to 40. And I thought, oh. So yeah, Tom Cruise's age surprised me. And then I realized it was him. And I thought, oh, hello, Tom. That man has aged amazingly. I'm not sure what the woman's name is. Forgive me.
Kelly McGillis.
Yeah, I was researching her about 20 minutes ago. And I did come across an article that said that she's not in the sequel, and she thinks it's because she's old and fat.
It's because, if you've seen the way she looks now, she's not really Hollywood beauty standards without wanting to get offensive.
Yeah.
Which is kind of shallow of them that they cast Jennifer Connelly instead, just because,
she's
you know what Hollywood's like.
Yeah. But it's a shame she's not coming back. But in this film, I thought she was very good for what she was given. But then again, what she was given was literally the lover. But honestly, that's all she really was. Every scene she come into, romantic music playing, music started playing, and that was it. So, you know.
It's not exactly a unique observation. It's been made by many people, but she is basically the beard in this film. She's the decoy for the fact that Iceman and Maverick are going to, play some beach volleyball, shall we say.
She's kind of surplus to requirements, and she's treated about, I think, with as much respect as a blow-up doll in this movie. I'm sorry, but
well, there are moments that I think it works relatively well that I can get away with, but for the most part, unfortunately, it's kind of
you can get away with.
Yeah, so yeah. Any other notes about the acting, Will, from your perspective, then?
Not. Here's the thing, there's no real standout moments from the acting, I would say. There's no real... I mean, I guess the confrontation scenes were nice, like, in terms of filmmaking. And in terms of performances, the end was quite nice with them all coming back together and, like, unifying it again. But other than that, no scenes really stood out for me. Because I watched the trailer for Top Gun 2, like in the trailers, every single time I went to the cinema. And I thought, holy crap, a lot of coverage they're showing here is in planes. Like in the trailer, there's more planes than actual character stuff. And I thought, oh, please tell me it's not just going to be planes. And then I watched this film just a minute ago. And I was like, you know what? Okay, no, there was a large split. It was like 60-40 character stuff over plane stuff. So I was like, I prefer this. But still, when you're in the planes, there's not really time to act. Well, of course you act, but there's no real time for any stand-up moments. So not really, no.
Well, those are action scenes. They're not really acting scenes as such.
Exactly. But yeah, I've read your review and it's like, it's very...
Did I write a review?
You did, ages ago. And it goes from one thing to another without any depth. That's what I'm going for. And it's ironic because in your latest episode, your top 10 Marvel films, you said you agreed with Toby when I like films that are a bit more meat to them.
Yeah.
And this film doesn't have said meat. It has anorexia.
It's not that kind of film.
Yeah. It's good, like the bones, and that's it. Bones of a film.
It's not that kind of movie. It's very much It's not aiming to
fun.
Be high art or anything like that. It's a fun popcorn flick, I guess. But so yeah, we did have a brief kind of disagreement before we started recording. Myself and DK/Serpent
makes a change
over the kind of the main two characters, I guess, Maverick and Goose. So did you want to just fill the audience in on where you stand with regards to that, GK?
Yeah, for the first half of this film, I just cannot stand Tom Cruise. I just think he's an arrogant SOB, and I guess that's kind of the point. But I do prefer Anthony Edwards' character. I know this is why we're disagreeing, because you think he's very stilted, but I like him. I think he actually did decent. The other cast, Val Kilmer, pretty good for the part that he's given. Kelly McGillis, as I say, I think she's just there as a prop more than anything. Tim Robbins was essentially a cameo in this. I don't know if you
there's a lot of essentially cameos in this movie, isn't there? You'd be amazed when you read the cast list and you're like, really? What are they doing?
Yeah. I mean, I've looked at it. I mean, prior to this, his work, Robbins' work, were mostly in TV, and he followed up this film with a starring role in that cult classic. Anyone?
Howard the Duck.
Exactly. Yeah. And the only other note I've got is, remember when Meg Ryan was a thing?
Was a thing.
She was like everywhere for the late 80s and 90s, and then she just
for a while. I mean, going into the early noughts, really. I mean, yeah. But yeah, I have notes on Meg that I'll get to because I have a few notes on the acting myself. Where the disagreement lies is that I personally think Cruise is great. This is nothing. I'm talking about character-wise, not like him personally, because he's one of those weird situations where I kind of can't stand the actual man, despite the fact that I can acknowledge he's quite charming. At times.
No, don't get me wrong. I think he's a decent actor. I just didn't like the character.
He's charming at what he needs to be, which is being this stereotypical movie star and shaking everyone's hand and smiling. But regardless, character-wise, I tend to like a lot of his characters because he's good at what he does. And I personally thought that I was drawn to liking Maverick a lot more at the start of the movie, where I found he was cocky but somehow still likable. And I thought you were supposed to kind of root for him. But again, I think that's maybe just my kind of take on that.
I think it was a theme at the time in Tom Cruise movies that he always started off really charming yet arrogant, and then at some point during whichever movie, be it this or Cocktail of Colour of Money, it just get, I think the film goes out of its way though to kind of knock him down a peg or two if you're thinking he's too cocky, because he does kind of burn out with Charlie the first time he tries it on with her and everything, and so he doesn't kind of get everything falling. Yeah, but then he does that remarkable, likable trait of following a woman into the bathroom. Which
that is dodgy as anything. Yeah, that's very much, oof, this is 1986, isn't it, really? But in fairness, though, how big is that women's bathroom? It's got double freaking doors.
Is that really what you picked up from that scene?
Yeah, it's massive.
Anyway. Honestly, the amount of people that were there, you'd think more people were actually in the bathroom, but it was only them two. I just thought, is he not going to lock the door somehow?
It's just cheesiness, isn't it? But I did kind of like that Charlie comes out and still like lets him win the bet with the her. Your friend was amazing to Goose, which is pretty funny. But I like a lot of the humor actually in the film. I personally do.
Oh yeah,
so.
Yeah.
And I do think there's some good chemistry between pretty much everyone in their different ways. But yeah, I will say Anthony Edwards was really good, but for me, just started off a little bit too stilted and kind of exposition machine, I guess, when he was like, a lot of the dialogue basically amounted to, "You're my best friend, Maverick. I've got a family, Maverick. I've taken you in, Maverick." Like, yeah, all right. But when he got the chance to develop as a character, he did kind of settle into it, and it's kind of, that's what led up to, him departing from the movie, shall we say, as we try to remain spoiler-free for now. But yeah. The only other note that I've got is that Meg Ryan is a really weird mixed bag in this movie, because she's virtually a cameo anyway, because she wasn't really that well known yet. It's before the kind of Tom Hanks rom-com era. And I think she started off terrible. Like when she's flirting with Goose and she first appears, I was like, this is an awful performance from an actress who's really well revered. But then she did literally just break my heart after Goose had, spoilers, after Goose had died, and she kind of had to come to terms with that. And she was acting alongside Cruise with the grief of it. And I was like, all right, fair enough.
I think that's one of the best scenes in the movie.
Yeah, probably. I mean, there's a couple of moments like that I would cite that I'm sure we'll get to, but yeah, definitely. The next thing I'm going to touch on, I'm going to start just going in general, because then I have a more specific area to touch on within this, but it's the writing, basically. And I was just curious if you guys had any thoughts before I jump in about it. What did you think about some of the writing of the movie and the various bits and pieces? And just for difference's sake, we'll start with you, DK.
I just think it's very much of its time. As we've touched upon with the bathroom thing, there are some things that you couldn't get away with now. And looking back on it, it surprised me just how badly it's aged in some respects.
Right. And did you feel the same way, Will?
No, not with the writing. I would say with this attitudes, perhaps, yes. But how it's written, I couldn't really... Again, it's not my kind of film in the sense that... Well, it's my kind of film. I will rewatch this like tomorrow or something because I want to actually focus on it because it's a very enjoyable film. But as the writing goes, yes, some of it's dated, some of it... But I think more so... is the direction, because you got to remember the director is working with the script and the director takes a lot of creative liberty in that kind of respect. And I think my problems lie with this film is more so the cinematography, and that goes hand in hand with the direction. So the writing is not so much a problem for me.
Okay, what were you saying, DK? Sorry.
I was going to say that there do seem to be quite a few problems with the direction and cinematography.
You and I are going to disagree when I get to that section again. I can just tell because I had quite a lot of praise for that. But okay.
No, it's a very beautiful film, but some of the problems that we've already spoke about in terms of like the problematic scenes, most of that would be down to how it's directed, I'd say.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
See, I personally think the writing is very... Let's try and think of the nicest way to put this. It's very by the numbers. As I was trying to make notes, I was like, if I was like a screenwriter, I'm like, wow, this is... It's not subtle in the way that it's like we established that Maverick is a Maverick straight early on with the whole flipping the bird and photographing and buzzing the tower and everything. Some of the dialogue, it's really quotable, but not necessarily because it's brilliantly written dialogue. So as you've mentioned, like your ego's writing checks, your body can't cash. Or, you know,
that's another 5 in the jar.
Or your maneuver was a bit too aggressive, Maverick. Well, I guess when I see something, I go right at it. Come on, man. Let me see if I've written a few of these down. It's so weird. You can be my wingman anytime. Bullshit. You can be my blah, blah. There's a lot of kind of, it's not exactly high art and it does the job, but it's very, like I said, for me, I think my greatest issues perhaps lie with the writing, because even to the point that it's clearly like a really soapy melodrama. Like it's fun, but even at the start, like Cougar panics and it zooms in on the whole, I've got a family to think about kind of thing. And I'm like, oh, and then immediately when he's, quit and left, it immediately switches to Goose has a family, and now Maverick all of a sudden has a dad with a kind of secret that he needs to know about. And
it's like similar notes to the trailer of the second film. It's like the only character stuff we see in that trailer is, oh, my dad trusted you, I won't make the same mistake, and that's it. And I was like, well, hopefully they develop that more, and that is the most surface level line I have ever seen in my life. So please give something.
I mean that's a trailer line though, isn't it? So hopefully that is the case.
Yeah.
But,
it might not even be in the final movie.
That's true.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what was I going to say? Yeah, and then it was painfully apparent what was going to happen, at least for me as somebody who consumes a lot of media. As soon as it got to the point where Maverick was like, you know what, I've got nobody else, and so Goose is the only family I've ever got. I'm making my mission to protect him. I was like, well, he's dead. You know what I mean? As soon as you have a heartfelt scene about how your family, this guy is dead. So, and the other criticism I've got of the writing is that all we see is Maverick getting in shit. Like he gets told off. Charlie, despite apparently falling for him, has to not say that and say it's a pass, but it's what not to do and everything. So we see like him getting chewed out like 4 or 5 times in a row. Then out of nowhere, the scene shifts and it's like Maverick is in a very close second place for the trophy. I'm like, how? He's been getting crap the entire time.
Yeah.
So we could have done with maybe seeing some stuff where he was getting good points. You know what I mean? To justify that, but regardless of that, it's kind of, I do like that the film, like I mentioned to you beforehand, it's kind of a Rocky film for action fighter pilot enthusiasts. Yeah. So it knows exactly what it wants to be, and when it boils down to like him going after the instructors because there's the rivalry and the competition, and you're too cocky, I'm going to beat you, and it knows that that's how it gets the audience, and you feel the adrenaline, and you're rooting, I think, at first for Maverick very much there to prove his worth. So well done to that level of writing. But again, the death was very cliche, and again, stuff like the first maneuver, hitting the brakes and going right past, coming back to save the day, is very base level writing. And again, it's not subtle, is it? The whole former enemy has now gained your respect.
In all fairness, though, this was the 80s.
Yeah, very. I mean, this is kind of, we say it's very cliche, but this may be responsible for kind of setting up a lot of these tropes in a lot of ways. So, what was I going to say then?
To be fair, in that respect, it wasn't like, you could tell it was made in the 80s. It was very 80s attitudes, how it was made and whatever. But in credit to it, again, I think Mike will agree with this. The direction on the whole was quite superb.
I thought so, yeah.
And it was very different from what the 80s films that I have actually seen, because I don't watch much 80s films, but it's very different to what I have seen.
I can't speak for DK, but I'm a child of the 80s, so I've seen a lot of 80s movies. It was just weird that Top Gun was a blind spot of mine until last year. But
I don't know, there were some scenes in this that I thought were quite amateurish towards the start. Yeah, and I was surprised at it. Just not the aerial flying scenes, because I mean they were really good, but just basic character interaction, and the editing seemed very choppy. And Scott were a great director. I mean, he came onto this from The Hunger, but to me, it just, looking through Modern Eyes, it just seems quite strange.
I have to disagree, because I was actually looking at the editing and I thought it was like cut together really well. It was like I was actively thinking, after this film, I'm going to find out how it was edited because I'm going to praise it. So we're completely different. I really enjoyed how it was put together, and I noticed with the music.
I mean, the music feeds into that with me.
Yeah, I agree, because the music never stopped. There was no moments where it was quiet. For example, there was always a continuous soundtrack, and that kind of dates it a bit.
But there were the music's playing, and it cuts to another scene, and the music just stops dead. It's like there was just, I don't know. It just felt very strange to me. It was very jarring.
I wouldn't say jarring, but I do kind of agree.
That is an editing thing, but I think it's specifically the way the music is edited and the way the score is done. Because I'll get to it later. The score is by Harold Faltermeyer, who is he was renowned for kind of 80s music and synth kind of scores. And you may well know him as the guy who unfortunately inflicted Axel F upon the world many years before the Crazy Frog got his hands on it and made it 10 times worse. So I do feel like a lot of that is kind of him sampling the pop songs of the soundtrack instead of making, it sounds really cruel, but making like a unique kind of score for it. He was like, we'll use a little brief bit of Take Your Breath Away here, and we'll chuck a bit of Danger Zone in there, and instead of actually sitting and making unique music. But I see what you mean in terms of that does jar when you're watching the scenes like that. And I'm very much in between the two of you in terms of like the direction and does it seem dated? Because again, it's probably responsible for making this cliche, but it's hard not to watch it with modern eyes and think. It starts with a lot of kind of montages and,
oh my God.
I love the color grade. The color grade was fantastic.
Yeah, it's no wonder a deal had to be cut with the Pentagon, because a good third of the movie's budget must have been spent on filters.
Yeah, it was gorgeous. The lots on it were gorgeous, I think.
It looks amazing, but it's the way that it's just blatant. Like, before you meet a character or anything, there's basically a hero sequence for the jets, and it becomes like military jet porn as Danger Zone plays. And it's
those opening credits are enough to give Michael Bay a priapism.
That's true.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly.
I think how towards the when we were introduced to the characters, kind of, when they were transitioning between room to room, we had a cutaway to the exterior shots again, and the orange skyline. I just thought that was beautiful. And then you had the J&L cuts, and then you went back into the scene, into the next room. I thought that was fantastic. Even
I have mentioned that,
in my opinion.
I've mentioned that later, so I will get into it a bit more with the direction, because I agree with you. There's a lot of great lighting and cinematography that's, I think, on display here. But I think like I said, it's quite clearly military propaganda, I think, in a little few places here, especially at the start.
In 2015, Library of Congress selected it for preservation in the film registry. So
a lot of films have had that, as culturally or aesthetically significant, which, I mean, like I said, that's been given to innumerable films at this point. Some of them you would be shocked to learn. But the thing that's most telling in terms of, I forgot to mention this, but looking it up kind of as a fact and figure, not on purpose, because I know that's your section, DK, but as I was kind of doing some research on the film, I found out that the Navy asked if they could put a Navy recruitment video as one of the adverts / trailers at the start of the VHS, because this film's responsible in large part for videos becoming a commodity that was owned by people rather than like a $100 at a time you can only rent it at a video store thing. So the Navy asked if they could put a recruitment ad on, and they were basically advised it would be a waste of money because the film is enough of a recruitment advert on its own. So why bother? It's completely redundant.
Fair enough.
Yeah, fair enough. You know what I mean? So it's like you said, though, the way they were setting up recruitment booths and everyone was coming out of the cinema and they were snagging them from their adrenaline rush of like, yeah, I'm going to join the Navy. Yeah, whatever. So, yeah, there's a lot of that that's very kind of hard to look past without gritting your teeth and being, all right, it's the 80s and it's the height of the Cold War and the I guess, jingoistic America kind of thing. So, anyway. One thing I did want to get into, which feeds into the writing, is that I'm sure you've probably, if you've looked at this film at all, you may well know about the significance of it in terms of something called queer theory. Forgive the use of the language. That is literally the name of the theory. I'm not using it as a slur or anything, but it's the name that was coined for it. And I do remember that this is something that came up when I was at university, because I do, unless if you don't know this, I do have a film studies degree. It's actually English and film joined. And for one of the modules, we had to study queer theory cinema. And the two biggest examples that it gives are Top Gun and Nightmare on Elm Street 2. I won't get into Nightmare on Elm Street 2 today, maybe another time. But it's not subtle. But yeah, in terms of Top Gun, it's fascinating that nobody who made the film set out to make something that would feed into these sort of homoerotic readings, and yet they are absolutely undeniable when you watch the film back, to the point that, like, there's I forget the movie, but Tarantino stars in a movie where he has a monologue about how, it's the gayest movie and it's all really about Iceman and Maverick. And like I said, that's been going around for a while, but other people, like I said, have not. I think Pauline Kael was one of the actual theorists that said it's from a bygone time where you can play things dead straight and yet it comes out and it's impossible, not to note the homoerotic subtext. And in the absence of actual like LGBTQ films, it's obviously understandable why it was adopted by that sort of subset of the culture to kind of to represent them.
If you go into Letterboxd, if you go into the most popular reviews, all it is, it's like, my observation of this film is not gay enough, not gay enough, not gay enough, and I just put fair enough.
Yeah, but so in terms of like trying to look into this theory as best I could, unfortunately I did lose all my essays, or I don't have them from my university days. Otherwise I could have probably got into a lot more, and I just can't quite remember all of it. But as I say, if you are interested in that, just do an internet search, because I'm sure those articles and things are out there. They're in film theory textbooks and everything. But so I took a list
archives from 4 years ago.
I took a little list of kind of things that I thought might feed into this theory to see if there was anything actually to it, even though we've well established over the years that there is. So the very first thing I noted is in the line when they're all getting instructed for the first time and they're talking about what the planes can do and the actual aerial combat capabilities. One of the guys turns to the other guy and just says, "I'm getting a hard on," to which his friend replies, "Don't tease me." Actual dialogue from the movie. There's a time when one of the guys is asked who he's pissed off. I think it's Goose gets asked that, and Goose says, "The list is long but distinguished," to which his aggressor says, "So is my Johnson." Yeah. Obviously, there's the line at the end, "You can be my wingman anytime." Pretty iffy. And there's other things like the volleyball scene. I mean, that's obviously male gaze, hard bodies, and it's the fact that the song that's playing on the soundtrack at that time is literally called "Playing with the Boys." Yeah. So, not to mention, like I said, the Iceman relationship is very much, a person in the playground that protests too much because they have a big crush on you, and in the end they come round. So, the other thing I noticed is that people have said that obviously the relationship with Charlie serves as kind of a decoy to kind of try to offset some of this tension. But even in that case, Charlie is a very ambiguously gendered name, which some people say is potentially deliberate. And a scene that I have discussed with DK, which is that after they kind of first have their date together, there's a scene in an elevator where he encounters Charlie and she's wearing like a very male-fitting bomber jacket and a cap with her hair all up. And people have read this as like, well, she looks very male, and he's all of a sudden a lot more interested. It's fascinating to me that things that are not intended that way can feed into these theories, because upon researching it, I found out that the reason for that was test audiences wanted an extra kind of love scene between them because they didn't quite believe their relationship. And that particular scene was filmed months after the end of shooting, at which point Kelly McGillis was filming a different movie and her hair was a different color and length. So that's why she had to have her hair up and inside the cap and everything. So it was for practical reasons, but it's just been read very much into this queer theory reading of the movie, which is fascinating. So again, that's my little mini deep dive. If everyone doesn't mind indulging me with that, as I say, it is fascinating. If you get a chance to look it up, please do. And if anybody wants to leave me any other examples, there's more than a few. And actually, Will, you texted me one, and I was like, wow, I missed that one. And you texted me a bit of dialogue. What was it? Something like, you're living your life between your legs, which is like, okay. I mean, it could be straight or gay, but it's certainly some pretty dodgy subtext there. But yeah, and again, yes, we know there's a straight sex scene, but we're going to get to that. I'm sure it's not the best, is it?
No.
So the next section that I have then is just the direction, which, as I said, I think personally Tony Scott is a pro. If you haven't checked out his work, he's done a lot of great things, not just action type movies. I believe he directed True Romance. I could be wrong.
He did.
Thanks. I thought you would tell me. He is the brother of Ridley Scott. He did unfortunately pass away. I'm not sure when, but I don't think it was recent. It was a fair while ago. Which is probably why he's not directing the sequel, if you're curious. But I think he does a really good job here under kind of difficult circumstances because, as we mentioned, the kind of cockpit shots where you have to see your actor get your dialogue across, but you're limited as just being in this dead space, I think is really well done. And this is kind of the film that pioneered the idea of being able to do that. On a slightly weirder note, I did note it's an odd decision that there's so dang much sweat in this movie. Like every scene, everyone is just dripping with sweat and glistening. And I was like, very...
Kelly pointed that out at one point. She says, why is everyone looking so greasy all the time?
Definitely. That's Kelly, your missus, by the way, not Kelly McGillis.
No.
But yeah, I was like, wow, everybody in every scene is sweating, and not just like, oh, it's a tense moment, so they're sweating, they might crash the plane or whatever, but like scenes of them in the offices discussing like who to give the trophies to and stuff. The two guys sitting across the desk are just glowing with sweat, and it's like, all right, cool choice, I guess. This is the masculinity of it all, whatever. I'm not sure which
you can only assume that the air conditioning's broke.
Yeah, the Top Gun school's great, but they have really terrible aircon. Exactly. Yeah, in terms of the flying shots, I can't fault them. I think the flying aerial dogfight shots are thrilling. They're just stunning for me, and that's kind of that's what you go into this film for. So I kind of don't understand.
If they got that wrong, then yeah.
I don't understand your thing about like, I hope it's dialogue and stuff.
No.
China attempted to pass off this footage on their state TV as an Air Force training exercise. They showed they just cut the aerial scenes from the movie, banged them on state TV, and then claimed it was their own Air Force.
Oh dear God!
I love that story because they were immediately found out, pulled all of them things down, and just will not address the incident.
No.
Which I love. That's like ultimate propaganda gone wrong.
But mate, we were talking about the acting earlier, and I said because of the film it takes place so much in the air that it's hard to mention the acting because they are action scenes. I'm not criticizing the action. The action is fantastic. I'm agreeing with you.
But I'm saying I personally don't really care as much about the kind of interpersonal type scenes. I'd be happy if it was, well, not so much happy because you want a little bit of depth, but I'd be all right with just like even more kind of aerial dogfight action and
I'd agree,
less of the soap opera type stuff, you know?
Yeah,
absolutely.
But yeah, that's fair enough. The thing I did note again in my research about these aerial shots is that, as DK mentioned, they only had like certain hours and things that they were allowed to use the actual military equipment for. So a lot of the shots that you see in the film are model shots and things, but they are regarded as so good that there was actually an investigation by the military to check if they'd actually broken the rules of their kind of agreement, and they'd been filming longer than they should have, or with other things that they shouldn't have been, which again, I think speaks to how good these action sequences are. It's not all of the shots, but it's just interesting that you probably can't really tell. Certainly I can't. No. So yeah. On the other hand, it was shocking to me that you see, again, perhaps it's just because the film is so kind of homoerotic masculine that as soon as you go to the bar, it suddenly turns into a very Michael Bay kind of look at the sexy chicks kind of thing for just a couple of minutes there. And I was like, that's weird. It's an odd choice. But yeah, fair enough. Last three scenes to talk about then. First of all, To feed into what Will was saying, and like I was going to say, the way that Tony Scott captures like what they call magic hour and all the various scenes at dusk to give it that kind of sunlit glow is just gorgeous. And it's not just the action scenes and stuff. I think my favorite looking scene is when Maverick is making his way to Charlie's house at dusk, and it's just the way that the orange glow on the kind of LA streets hits. To me, it's just gorgeous. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, and so the next thing, obviously, I've got to talk about the really painful sex scene. Which, yeah, it is. Yeah.
I took a video when it was on and sent it to Michael. I rewound it and I just filmed my live reaction because.
And I was really weird because I got that from you, and I was like, "Wow, I'm pleased you said that," because I've made the exact same note, which is just like, "This is the worst scene in the movie." It goes from like Mexican telenovela.
It's fantastic.
Maybe if you want to look at it as hilarious,
why
the tongue? Exactly.
It's so such a weird choice. I don't want to see it.
It's a weird choice. It's lit weird. It's over dramatically played. It's just jarring, and yeah, I can't really think anything other than worst scene in the movie. Unfortunately, worst scene in the movie. I think we probably much all agree on that one. So,
unironically brilliant.
Yeah,
Will's just on board with it.
No, they're making love, and it's bright orange. It's beautiful, and then you have a.
He was so disgusted. He just logged off.
It went from orange to blue, and then they start the foreplay again, and I think you've just like kissing, but now you'll suddenly inside again, but now you'll start from the top, quite literally, and working your way down, and what's going on? And the music doesn't help because it's so dramatic. Like,
oh yeah, Take My Breath Away is an odd choice of very dramatic music, but yeah, the choice of all that weird kind of blue lighting, the pseudo slow-mo, and then most importantly, like DK says, why so dang much tongue? We did not need to see that much tongue, damn it. As you can currently see on Will's screen, as I'll probably edit in. So yeah, not the best scene in the movie, easily the worst. And the last sort of thing I wanted to say on the direction is just that I really love the way the last scene is done, because it's the actual kind of dogfight. And I found myself genuinely, as somebody who's generally against like killing and war and stuff, I found myself like, yeah, destroy those enemy players. At the end, I was like, I'm getting kind of sucked into this, I guess, a little bit. Yeah. So,
the propaganda has worked.
Exactly, yeah. But so did you guys have any other thoughts on any of those scenes, or just in general about the direction or cinematography and stuff of the movie?
I do criticize the direction of the actual sex scene itself, because I thought, whilst the cut was jarring and absolutely hilarious, I thought how it was directed was like flawless. Like the actual scene, it's hard to fault, but it was just jarring. It's not terrible. Well, it's terrible in the context of the film, but
it's Zack Snyder in Watchmen levels of a terrible sex scene.
Fair enough.
Holy shit.
Maybe, well, if you like it, you like it. That's fair enough. But yeah. Any other thoughts then? Or did you agree with me about the kind of lighting situation? And
I agree. Yeah, I agree with that.
I'm pleased you picked up on that, because that was something I picked up the first time I watched the movie. I was like, wow, it's amazing that, and that must have been a nightmare to catch that kind of magic hour dusk shot, because you can't fake it, and you've got like a very small window of opportunity to film it. So kudos, excellent direction, So yeah, and again, lion scene's great. Acting scenes serviceable, I guess, but the cockpit scenes are great too. And yeah, any thoughts, DK, on direction before I move on?
No, pretty much. As I say at the start, the character scenes, they didn't work for me. It was only later on that I became invested in the movie. But those last few scenes with the dogfights, the cockpit scenes, really good. The second half to me saved the movie, and the least said about the sex scene, the better.
Yeah, I'll talk about some of the later scenes when I get to the section that I've called scenes, because it kind of feeds into direction, I guess, but I've listed it under scenes because towards the end I was like, I'm actually quite impressed with some good drama and some absolute scenes. So yeah. The next thing I was going to talk about was the music, but I've kind of addressed it already. So the only other note I have is that it still shocked me, even though, yes, I've only seen this once before, but I was still surprised that the movie literally opens with Danger Zone, like straight into it. There's no like little bit of, it's like, bit of text describing things, Danger Zone. So, but yeah, it's interesting that this film, I mean, what a flippin' soundtrack it's got. which I think is from a bygone age of movies, especially from the 80s, where the soundtracks were all bangers that were just great. So,
going back to what you said earlier with regards to Rocky, I think the two main soundtracks of that decade was this and Rocky 4.
Well, Rocky, any of the Rockies, but 4 and 3 specifically, yeah, because you got to remember Rocky 3 was Eye of the Tiger, and that was freaking stratospheric at the time. So, yeah, definitely. But yeah, 4, definitely Survivor, Burning Heart, and what is it? Toto, Hold the Line. Speaking of Toto, was on there, I think. And all kinds. James Brown, Living in America.
Every kid in the classroom back then had this cassette. And as I said to you earlier, I was one of those sad little teens
showing our age
around to this soundtrack.
If you're around Will's age and you're listening, a cassette tape is what we used to have before. Before there were downloads, there were these things called CDs. They were kind of like a DVD or Blu-ray. And before that, there were these things called cassette tapes. They were a weird sort of square
block. Okay, Grandpa, let's get you back to bed.
Yeah, man, go.
Yeah, again, very 80s, but okay, fair enough. So yeah, my last section before the kind of explanation, conclusions, etc., was just about the various scenes, which, as I've said, yeah, it's unashamed military plane porn, and the montages and stuff are a little cheesy at first, which I think kind of feeds into what you were saying, that the film does suck you in, but it takes a while to get past things like that. Also related to the kind of some of the theories that I put forward and the direction, it's kind of weird and again jarring by a modern perspective that a lot of the early scenes are just Maverick and Iceman straight on just eyeing each other up. It's kind of like, yes, I get it, they're competitive with each other and that's what you were going for, but it's so over the top and it's just once or twice too many for me. So yeah. So as I mentioned, the scene where he's taken on Michael Ironside's Jester, I found that you were rooting for kind of Maverick and Goose in that scene, weirdly. I thought that was the point, but again, it kind of establishes that even then he's too cocky, he has to go for the flyby. And this is the first of your, again, things that don't quite work, cheesy cartoon level, oh, you made me spill my coffee, man, kind of scenes, which I was like, oh, dear, we don't need that as a recurring thing, because it's
but
it's
it
very,
does bring up
cartoon.
another one of those lines for the queer theory thing, where the guy, after he's just chewing him out in the office, and he comes out and the guy with the tray spills the coffee on him, and he says, God damn, I want to get some butts.
Yes, of course. Yes. That's right. Absolutely. I can't disagree with that one. But yeah, I just think it's very cartoonish, the way it goes with that. But the next sort of scene that I mentioned was the romance scene between when he first kind of goes for dinner and she won't let him shower and whatever else, which I've said is very well played. And I think Kelly McGillis sells some really difficult stuff, as you've mentioned, not very well written stuff, quite well. She elevates it a little bit, but as I was watching that scene, I was like, yes, this is all very good, but if I hear the word MIG one more time, I swear I'm going to scream. It's just so annoying. Let's talk about the MIG. Forget about the MIG. But you never took on a MIG. What about the MIG? Don't talk about the MIG. Shut up about the friggin' MIG. But yeah. I also found, again, related to what you were saying, I found Maverick less relatable when he takes a huff. When he gets told off in the class and she's like, this is an example of what not to do, even though it's a pass. And then she gives it. That scene leads into the very cheesy sort of, I can't let anyone know that I've fallen for you. Tears of our lives.
But you watch that scene and you think, why? Why have you fallen?
That's what I mean, yeah. Exactly, because like I said, it's like, taking a huff like that is very, what are you doing? Especially when you're trying to be more likable and we're meant to believe she's, Anyway. Effective in some ways if you can forgive the cheesiness, I think, but only in the sense that like you've got to know you're watching soap opera level at that point.
Yeah.
Things that I did love towards the end that you were saying, I think it got quite serious, and I really liked the scene when Maverick is dealing with the loss of Goose, and he goes to Tom Skerritt's house. I forget the character's name, Viper, I think.
Viper, yeah.
And he's kind of and he's basically discussing with him, how to deal with these things, and he's got a choice of like graduating or quitting. And it leads to my favorite line, which I won't say because I'll save that for the favorite line section at the very end. But there's just a really cool moment between them after they get deployed, which obviously they get deployed to actual combat. And again, cheesy, but it's still kind of, it sucked me in at this point, so it really worked that he was like, talk to me, Goose, as he clutches the dog tags, and that's when he gets his mojo back. And cliche repeating the whole jet wash situation, and the fact that he's learned not to leave his wingman, and yes, it just ends with him literally letting Goose go as he throws the dog tags away, and then naturally we have that kind of callback that he has to be seen getting the girl as well, even though it doesn't make a whole jot of sense, because she was going off to a job in Washington or something. But there you go. Never mind. Why apply logic? So yeah, that was the end of all of my notes, apart from the, like I said, favorites and conclusion and stuff that we'll get to. But so did you guys have anything you wanted to talk about before we hit that section?
Honestly, no, because again, we've kind of touched upon it. It's not really a meaty film. Like you said, it's very one to the next, and there's not really much to talk about.
Yeah, fair. If that's everything, then we'll jump into the next section, which is obviously, as you know, if you've been keeping up by now, we give a little bit of extra interest by talking about our favorite character, moment, and line. So I'm going to go around everyone in kind of clockwise order and ask for your favorite character in the movie. And we'll start with you, Serpent. Then we'll hit you up, Wings, and then myself, Flash, to finish. So, okay, favorite character.
Okay, I'm going to go with, well, you know this already. I'm going to go with Goose.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, there is even a line that everybody liked him in the film, and it's understandable. So, and yeah.
Having said that,
I'm guessing there's
a very pivotal scene with Wolfman.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, true. When
he's ignored for most of the movie, and then he gets on the phone to, everybody to tell him that Maverick's quit. And up until that point, he's hardly even there.
It's a very weird. When I was watching that again this time, I was like, "Who is that? What's this scene about?" And it is just literally him ringing Viper or whatever to say, "Oh, this is Wolfman and Maverick's quit." And I was like, "All right, okay, fair enough." But there's a lot of characters like that. Like even the two replacement kind of what do you call them, Rias that he gets to fly with are like non-characters. Sundown and Merlin are just there to fill in because there's no Goose anymore at that point. And I was like, "Oh, all right, weird." But yeah, so anyway, your character, because you're a massive fan of ER and the 2004 live-action Thunderbirds, you're going to go with Anthony Edwards. Is that right?
Hey, Thunderbirds is a classic movie. It's Frakes, for goodness sake.
Anthony Edwards' brains, just saying. But no, anyway, you're going to go with Goose in that case then, yeah? Awesome. Yeah. Will, who was your favourite character in the movie, if you're still with us? That's a no. I guess then.
Iceman.
And why was your favorite character Iceman then?
It was nice to see the conflict. It was nice to actually have something to kind of latch onto in a film, and I think he was a perfect, I wouldn't say antagonist, he kind of did play that role a bit of the antagonist, but yeah, it was nice to see the dynamic, and you could really tell. I didn't know about the fact because, of course, I only watched the film, so I haven't actually researched it yet. But I didn't know that him and Cruise had like tension off screen, like method acting.
Yeah, they're friends now,
next level. Oh, of course, but it's like method acting kind of, and yeah, that's probably why. Just because it was nice to see that dynamic. A lot.
Yeah, it is kind
of
cool.
I can't say Tom Cruise because I didn't even know it was Tom Cruise until about 10 minutes into the film. I was oh god, he's young.
Really? All right.
Oh, honestly, yeah. I was like, oh, that's meant to be Tom Cruise. Well, it is Tom Cruise, not meant to be Tom Cruise.
Fair enough. Just as a counterpoint to that, then weirdly enough, my favorite character I've said was quite obvious, but it's true that it is Maverick. But apparently, it's not that obvious. But yeah, that's who you're following throughout, and that's whose story I'm kind of invested in. So for me, that was who I was feeling the interest in throughout the movie, I guess.
Talk about subtext.
just literally that was obviously the lead character, and you've got to be invested in him, I suppose, because everyone else is either dead or barely a character. So anyway, moving on then to favorite moment, and again we'll start with you, DK. What's your favorite moment of the movie?
As in scene.
Well, yeah, moment or scene, anything like that.
I wouldn't say it's a favourite because it's just so depressing, but I love the scene between Tom and Meg Ryan once Goose dies. I think that's an incredibly well played scene.
Yeah. It's an interesting choice that like Cruise as Maverick is so kind of choked up and hurt that he just doesn't even talk in the scene. It's like, wow, it's powerful, it's emotional. And I was kind of moved by him when the accident first happens and he's kind of cradling Goose, and you get the one guy like, "You've got to let him go, sir." I was like, oh. That's a surprisingly emotional moment in this cheesy movie.
It's a good actor when they can convince you and they're not uttering a line.
Yeah, exactly right. But yeah, good scene, and I can see why you would say that was the best scene. Understandable. And so, what about you, Will?
Probably when Charlotte and Maverick are on the balcony. Well, not the balcony, the porch on the back, and they're having the food, they're having the drinks and whatever. And I think it's pitched perfectly in terms of like the romance, but also the kind of awkwardness or like the tension between the two. I thought that was like played really brilliantly, and they had fantastic chemistry, particularly in that moment. So that would probably be my favorite scene.
Fair enough. I understand that. That makes sense. Just to conclude that, then mine, I said it's a bit of a cheat, but my favorite is just all of the flying dogfight scenes. That's
the cop out. Well,
that is a cheat.
What's your favorite moment?
I liked the training exercises, but I also liked, if I have to pick one, I would say definitely the engagement at the actual end of the film. But again, it's obvious, but I do like it. So yeah, that would be my personal favorite moment. And then favorite line, DK.
Well, it's not often that you can say that Michael Ironside delivers an understated performance, but I do like his line when he comes to him in the locker room and says, "That was some of the best flying I've seen today, right up until the part where you got killed."
Yeah, exactly. Awesome.
That's a
cool. Fair enough. What about you, Will?
Now that you said that, I want to go with that one, but no, it's still you live your life between your legs. That's so good.
Fair enough. Always for the humor. And yeah, mine is just as I alluded to earlier. It's from the scene with Viper and Maverick, and it's just after they've had that kind of heart to heart and they've been deployed, and he's giving him his orders and says, "Maverick, you're gonna head out. You'll get your rear later when you get your equipment, and if you don't, give me a call. I'll fly with you." Because it was something in Tom Skerritt's delivery and the fact that I was like, yes, heart, I like it, I'm feeling that. So yeah, I really appreciated that little scene in that line. I thought it was a great delivery and a great little moment at that point in the film. So that's what I would have went with. So nice. Before we give our conclusions and scores, then we should probably give the audience interaction, and then hopefully people won't click off quite as quickly if we do it that way around. So I will jump into the audience interaction.
You mean they're here until this point?
Well, hopefully. If just to see what Will do next. But no, I say we. It was DK that was responsible for it this week, so he did put out a message on social media that just said, "What are your thoughts on the original '86 Top Gun movie? Does it fly high in your estimation, or hit the ground like a sweat-covered volleyball?" We had a few responses. Andre, son of Mo. Now that you've seen the film, you know what that's about. Andre, son of Moog, just says, "Never seen it. Owen, thanks for that mental image of sweat-covered volleyball." Will Templar says, "I better hurry up and watch it," which he did not do, as we know. And finally, at Dr. 12th says, "It was a phenomenon in the States when it was first released. I think that everyone in my school both saw it and owned the soundtrack. I liked it then, and I still like it. It's one big telenovela with planes and 80s music. What's not to like?" So, yeah. That's kind of more or less sums that up. So we'll head into the last part of the review then, which was going to be our individual conclusions and score out of 5. Who wants to go first? I'll open up the floor to you guys.
Should I just go first? Because mine's literally one word. And yeah,
go for it then.
Solid 6 out of 10. All 3 out of 5.
Okay.
Same score as last time. Doctor Strange.
So just solid. All right, fair enough. Solid. I do love the effort you put into your conclusions.
Dude, I watched this film 10 minutes before this.
I know. I'm joking.
If I had to notes, I would have been good. But yeah, as in like a conclusion. Oh well. I don't even have paper. I'm looking around for the paper. I don't have paper. It's funny because it's dark and I've got something.
I'm glad you were able to make it eventually in the end last minute anyway, though. That's good. And it's cool to get the perspective of somebody who's just seen it and it's like very fresh. So yeah, I mean, 3 out of 5.
Quite a lot, to be fair.
Yeah, absolutely. 3 out of 5 is
You're
not
just
bad.
far more positive on your score than me.
A little bit, yeah, but we'll see. Do you want to go next, DK, or would you rather I went?
I'll go. Get it over with.
Go on then.
It's quite a little long one, if that's all right.
Yeah, fair enough.
But I hadn't seen this movie since the late 80s, and though loving it at the time, looking at the subject matter today, especially in these times, is, for me personally, uncomfortable. What with the fetishization of the military-industrial complex front and centre. Cruise, to me, is a likable for the first half of the movie, and the producer Edwards. Obviously, we've disagreed on that, but while McGillis is only there to provide the lead character as a distraction rather than a fully fleshed out character, Cruise, in my opinion, only comes to life in the latter half of the movie, giving Edwards both the distinction of outperforming Cruise and simultaneously making the movie better by his absence. I don't mean any disrespect by that, but playing to the arrogance of the Maverick character rather than portray him as a relatable character, the film itself kind of descends into a mishmash of tired types that were cringeworthy then, and in some cases pretty much embarrassing now. However, even with those problems and my dislike of the first 40 minutes, the second half suddenly seems to evolve into a different picture. And despite my initial reservations, and in some cases revulsion, sex scene, I became enthralled by the focus on character development that replaced the following of a golden boy with an attitude theme. And those final dogfighting scenes are shot beautifully and have you on the edge of your seat even today. I was worried after 10 minutes that I hated the film. After 30 minutes, I was convinced of it. And at the 90-minute mark, I was loving it. It's very much a product for its time and simultaneously exemplifies both the best of the 80s and the worst excesses of the period. It's a little different from the other action movie fare of the time, though, and for that, at least, it carves its own little niche, and I've given it 3.5 out of 5.
Okay.
Wow, higher than me. I was not expecting that. That was a really good review.
Yeah, that's not bad. Okay, I'm going to give my conclusion, which is slightly less long than that, but I think I'm probably going to be the one that's most favorable to the movie because I probably liked it the most. But I just said adrenaline-fueled, iconic, immersive, and emotionally affecting at times. Great action and extremely entertaining. Is it high art? No, but it's a perfect example of a popcorn movie star-led action film that does everything it sets out to do. Brilliant directing elevates things. The soundtrack is well used and pumps you up at all the right moments, as do several of the plot beats. The cliche melodrama is hard to forgive at times, but just go with it, get through it, and go along for the ride. This film is part of pop culture lexicon for a reason and earns its place in the zeitgeist. Bring on the sequel, and I gave it 4 out of 5.
Cool.
So, very interesting range of scores: 3, 3.5, and 4, which obviously is going to make the average for the podcast quite easy to work out, thankfully. And so, yes, overall, the Silver Screen Podcast is going to give Top Gun 1986 3.5 out of 5 stars.
Well done, DK, for having the right opinion.
Oh, thank you.
Hey!
Screen approved.
So, yeah, it's interesting. We got a range of things, but I don't think anybody would say it was terrible. Well, certainly, I mean, we're all within the same 1-point range, so... That's fair, and I liked it. I got a lot out of watching it a second time, and I would definitely watch it again. I think it's enjoyable, and I'm looking forward to watching the sequel on the big screen. And because I never really saw kind of Jack.
Absolutely,
stuff, so. Awesome.
I've heard very good things, by the way.
Yeah, it's getting glowing reviews.
The initial reviews are like super, like very good film.
Yeah, I'm amazed at how high the praise for the sequel is. But yeah, if nothing else, I'm just looking forward to the event of it. Although currently my nearest cinema that I'm a member of is closed because the complex it's in is having some technical issues or something. So it better hurry up and open because there's a lot of films coming out I want to see. So if you are at Cineworld or the Gate Newcastle, get your fingers out. Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks for joining me, DK, again, and Will, as regularly these days. That will conclude the first half of this second series of Silver Screen Podcast. We've had a rough sort of couple of weeks of it, doing a lot of stuff all at once, but this is the end of a massive pile, so it's a bit shorter than usual. I think we're perhaps all a little bit burned out, but hopefully you've got enough bang for your buck, and what can you really say about Top Gun, I guess, other than the obvious. But yeah. Do, if you have a chance, to give it a rewatch, though, definitely, especially before the sequel, and we shall see what everyone thinks of that. It's going to be very interesting. So we will be back, however. We're having a very short break, but we will be returning on Thursday, June the 9th, as you're hearing this, for the second half of Series 2. And that will be myself and DK will be here to give you, again, a review of a very relevant film at that point in time, and that will be the movie Jurassic World. Just in time for Dominion, the conclusion of the Jurassic saga.
Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe. I've been Will. That's been DK. That's been Michael. See you next time in 3 weeks' time. Goodbye.
that was apparently modern day Max Headroom. So
I can't follow that.
We can't really, can we? But yeah,
No.
You know the drill. We are at podcast_screen on Twitter. We are Silver Screen Podcast everywhere else. We are Mike's podcast feed for this and our Star Trek Hit or Miss podcast, all in the same feed everywhere you get audio information. So your big boys like your Google Podcasts and your Apple, your Stitcher, your whatever else, Spotify, and all of the rest of it. And again, Hit or Miss Star Trek has its own YouTube channel and Instagram and everything as well. At Tom Trek on Twitter, or just search for it everywhere around. So we are going to go and collapse and take a shower and
get a glass of hemlock.
Parade around the locker room, talking about how, you know, our asses writing checks we can't cash or whatever. And yeah, everyone, thanks again so much, guys, for joining me as we slowly descend the steps into madness. We will be back. We will join you again later. If I can only apologize if you do come back. Thank you. So yeah, join us again, and remember, in the epic words of Arnie, unfortunately, or perhaps not, I'll be back.